A mountain's outline should tell a simple story. Ancient stone, immovable and unchanging. But in the world's highest places, the shape of the mountain no longer makes sense. In 1786, reaching Mont Blanc was pure exploration. By 1996, commercial climbs and disaster collided on Everest. Today, nearly 1,000 people scramble above the death zone each spring. How did a silent symbol of endurance become a stage for so much risk? In 1786, two men, Jacques Balmat and Michel Gabriel Paccard, stood on the summit of Mont Blanc. Their climb marked the beginning of alpinism as a pursuit of challenge, not survival. Before that moment, mountains had been boundaries. Now, they became invitations. Throughout the early 19th century, the Alps drew a small group of ambitious Europeans. The golden age of alpinism, spanning the 1850s and the 1860s, saw dozens of first ascents. Names like the Matterhorn, the Eiger, and the Grands Jorasses entered climbing history as teams of British, French, and Swiss climbers set out with little more than wool, hemp rope, and hand-drawn maps. This was not sport for the masses. Early climbers were scientists, aristocrats, and guides, often operating at the edge of what was considered possible. Expeditions were measured in weeks, not days. Success depended on improvisation, judgment, and endurance. Mistakes could not be rescued by technology or outside help. The risks were accepted as part of the unknown. Each new ascent was a statement of intent, to go where no one had gone, to measure the world by foot and by eye. The mountain was the test, and the prize was discovery itself. In this era, the idea of paying for access or of crowds on a summit would have made little sense. Climbing was an act of exploration, reserved for those willing to accept uncertainty and consequence. The values of the time were rooted in self-reliance and the pursuit of the unclaimed. This was the foundation on which all future mountaineering would be built. By the early 1990s, the mountain economy had started to reshape Everest itself. In 1992, commercial guiding companies began offering package expeditions to the world's highest summit. For the first time, clients could pay tens of thousands of dollars for a chance at the top, regardless of their personal climbing experience. Operators like Adventure Consultants and Mountain Madness advertised professional logistics, Sherpa support, and the promise of a summit photo, transforming Everest from a remote goal into a product. Demand surged. Each successful client meant new bookings, more revenue, and a growing reputation in a competitive market. The business model rewarded results. Expeditions became larger, schedules tighter, and the margin for error thinner. By 1996, the pressure to deliver summits collided with the mountain's realities. On May 10th and 11th, 1996, a sudden storm trapped dozens of climbers high on the mountain. Delayed turnarounds and crowded routes left teams exposed above 8,000 meters. 8 people died in less than 24 hours, including experienced leaders Rob Hall and Scott Fisher. The tragedy was dissected in investigative accounts, most famously in John Krakauer's Into Thin Air, which documented how business incentives and client expectations influenced life or death decisions. The events of 1996 forced the climbing world to confront a new equation. When the summit is sold, risk is not just personal. It is shared among guides, clients, and local workers. The mountain became a stage for ambition, commerce, and consequence, setting the conditions for the scale and pressures that define Everest today. In 2023, Everest's summit season had become a study in scale. Nepal's Ministry of Tourism issued 478 climbing permits for Everest that year, each one representing a foreign climber. Add Sherpa guides, support staff, and independent teams, and the number of people on the mountain in a single season swelled past 900. That crowding is not theoretical. Photographs from the South Col and the Hillary Steppe show lines of climbers stretching across the ridge, each person waiting for a brief window to move higher, sometimes for hours, in a place where time is measured in oxygen and body heat. The numbers reveal an industry grown vast. Everest alone has seen more than 12,000 recorded summits since 1953, with over half of those coming after 2010. Permit sales, expedition fees, and support services now generate millions in revenue for Nepal each year. Denali, North America's highest peak, sees about 1,000 annually, but those numbers pale in comparison. Annapurna first, notorious for its danger, has far fewer climbers and a history of much higher fatality rates. The environmental cost is harder to tally. In response to decades of accumulated debris, including oxygen bottles, tents, and food wrappers, Nepal enforces a requirement that each climber remove 8 kilograms of trash. Yet enforcement is uneven. Reports of bribery and falsified certificates circulate among guides and officials. Meanwhile, the Khumbu Icefall, a glacier that must be crossed by nearly every expedition, grows increasingly unstable as temperatures rise. Melting ice exposes crevasses and old hazards, while the sheer volume of climbers accelerates wear on fragile routes. For regulators, the challenge is not only how many people the mountain can hold, but how much strain its environment can bear. Above 8,000 meters, the human body begins to fail. Oxygen levels drop to a third of what is available at sea level. Muscles waste, appetite disappears, and even at rest, the heart can race past 140 beats per minute. No amount of training or previous experience allows permanent acclimatization at these heights. High-altitude medicine specialists say the body's systems degrade hour by hour. Judgment and reaction time decline sharply. Cognitive testing at this altitude shows decision-making slows by 20 to 30%, sometimes more. In the death zone, mistakes are not just likely, they are often fatal. Crowding compounds these dangers. When climbers are forced to wait in line at 8,000 meters, they spend precious time exposed to hypoxia and cold. Supplemental oxygen runs low. Delays of even an hour can tip a marginal situation into disaster. Medical records from Everest expeditions reveal that many deaths occur not from dramatic falls or avalanches, but from simple exhaustion and confusion. Climbers lose their way, forget to clip into safety lines, or collapse just short of camp. Veteran Sherpa guides warn that survival margins vanish above 8,000 meters. One guide with more than 30 Everest summits puts it plainly: there are no small mistakes in the death zone. Expedition operators point to advances in logistics, fixed ropes, improved weather forecasts, and better oxygen systems as reasons why the percentage of fatalities per attempt has dropped compared to the 1990s. But as more climbers enter the death zone each season, the absolute number of deaths has not declined. The risk, once personal, is now multiplied by the choices of everyone on the route. Glacier models now predict that by the end of this century, the Himalayas could lose up to 1/3 of their ice mass. This is not just a scientific projection. It is a reality already visible in the shrinking Khumbu Glacier and the deepening crevasses of Everest's most traveled routes. For Nepal, the consequences reach far beyond the mountain itself. Everest climbing permits generated more than $7 million in 2023, accounting for nearly 2/3 of the country's total mountaineering royalties. While this figure is a small fraction of national gross domestic product, it carries outsized weight in local economies and government budgets. The reliance on climbing revenue shapes policy decisions, making every permit a calculation between immediate income and long-term sustainability. As glaciers retreat and weather grows more unpredictable, the pressure to act or not to act intensifies for both policymakers and communities who depend on the mountain's seasonal income. 3 distinct futures now stand before the world's highest mountains. One path is regulated access, where permit numbers are capped and climbers must prove experience before setting foot on the route. Proposals in Nepal have called for annual limits of 300 permits and mandatory high-altitude certifications. Another path accepts increased risk. If demand continues unchecked and climate instability accelerates, more frequent mass casualty incidents may follow. The third possibility is a cultural shift, where prestige returns to smaller, self-reliant teams, and the value of a climb is measured not by the summit, but by the style and ethics of the ascent. Each direction carries consequences for climbers, guides, local communities, and the mountains themselves. The decision is not just about who climbs, but how and at what cost. Right now, more climbers than ever stand in line for summits that grow less stable each season. Profit and pressure reshape even the world's highest places, and the real risk is not just to those who climb, it is to the meaning of challenge itself. The mountain, unchanged, waits for our answer.